What should we talk about today? What should we learn about? How about, here's an idea. The biggest lessons that I've learned over the last year of my life, specifically with regards to relationships, and what I wish that I knew before I got into my last relationship. I think that's a good one. Yeah. So, what are some great lessons learned very painfully from somebody who has devoted a lot of time and attention towards improving the quality of the relationships in my life? Let's get into it. Boundaries. Oh, God. Yeah. Here we go. Number one, lesson learned: love is not enough. I know, contrary to popular belief, love is not enough. If you love somebody, but you do not have boundaries, your relationship is doomed. I learned this a very painful way over the last year. Now, let me hit you with a harsh statement, an oof of sorts. Until you have boundaries, nobody can respect you. Until you have good boundaries, you will constantly hurt other people. You will be hurt by other people. You will engage in all sorts of self-destructive and relationship-destroying behaviors like codependency, people-pleasing, sweeping difficult conversations under the rug, not being honest, being inauthentic, and more. But wait, there's more. Until you have boundaries, you will not be able to protect yourself, anybody that you care about, or a relationship that you are trying to sustain in some way. And this applies to dating, romantic relationships, this applies to friendships, this applies to familial relationships, this applies to business relationships. This is a relational principle. Contrary to popular belief and running counter to many of our internal belief systems, being able to say no is a good thing when done at the right time. Becoming an overly negative person and causing conflict for no reason is not a good thing. But if we cannot say no when we need to, we are incapable of protecting ourselves, the values that we care about, the people that we love, and the values that they care about. Until we can develop boundaries and the ability to say no, we will constantly find ourselves in relationships that are causing us to become less of who we actually want to become instead of more of who we want to become. And on the flip side of that, until we have really good boundaries, nobody who gets into a relationship with us will find themselves becoming more of who they want to be. Instead, as I mentioned earlier, they will often find themselves becoming more of who they don't want to be. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm sharing something that I learned from my own experience in relationships over the past year. And I got into a relationship with somebody who I cared about incredibly deeply, who I loved so, so much. And by virtue of getting in a relationship with me, this person, this girl, became the exact person she did not want to become in some very important ways. And I started to become somebody that I did not want to become. And the entire root of this problem was an inability on both of our parts to have really healthy boundaries and say no to each other when it was the right thing to do. So take it from me. If you don't want your relationships to explode, learn how to say no. Now we're going to get into the second part of this, because where do boundaries come from? Boundaries, in fact, come from values and from having a clear understanding of what it is that we want out of life and who it is that we want to become, and also what we want our relationships to be like and where we want our relationships to go. So if I can hit you with some very practical advice and hopefully make this short, sweet, and to the point, if you've never sat down and actually asked yourself, what are my values? What kind of partner do I want? Right? And on the flip side, plot twist, when you do that exercise and you write down this whole list of qualities that you want in your partner, you go through their physical qualities, their personality characteristics, their values, you're actually writing down a list of the person you need to become in order to be a good option for your ideal partner. So keep that in mind. But actually sit down and write this stuff out. What do you want out of life? Who do you want to become? What are your values? Now, a great way to find out deep down the honest truth of what kind of person we want to become is to ask ourselves, what is the one thing that we are holding on to right now as the golden goodie, the silver bullet, the thing that we think if we get it is going to provide us with some sort of extreme boost in happiness or satisfaction or whatever. And sitting on the theme of this video, let's choose what is probably the most common for most people, and that is the dream relationship. When you find the dream partner, the person that you've been looking for forever, the one, the soulmate. The thing to ask yourself, right, is oftentimes when we get into this mindset of just looking for the one, it's a mixed bag of motivations. Part of us is genuinely seeking the joy of human connection and love that is one of the greatest experiences that we can have in life. But there's another part of us that is writing an unspoken contract that says, I am not allowed, I do not have permission to become a certain version of myself until I have achieved this thing, until I have achieved this dream relationship. So to find out, honestly, what are your values? Who is it that you would like to become in your life? Keeping right now the focus on you specifically for this part. Ask yourself, if I could imagine myself achieving this thing, having the dream relationship, what would having that give me permission to feel? Would it allow me to feel worthy? Would it allow me to feel more lovable? Would it allow me to feel more love inside of myself that I can give to others, particularly this one person? Would it allow me to feel like my life is more fun, that I have more meaning, I have more positive responsibility, I have a reason to wake up and show up every day in some way that I may not have right now? So go through this list of what do you imagine that you get to feel when you meet the one? And realize that a lot of what you're seeking out of this relationship is not the relationship itself, but the ability to have this kind of emotional experience, to become the kind of person who has these kinds of emotional experiences. And I know on the surface, this may sound kind of shallow, like you're seeking after emotional experiences, but every single emotional experience that we have is connected to a kind of person who has the capacity to feel those kinds of things, and B, the person who is capable of taking the actions that foster and protect the ability to have those kinds of experiences. So running full circle here now, you can see how this starts to connect back to the importance of boundaries. When you find out who it is that you want to become, what kinds of experiences do you want to have in life? Do you want to live a life that is deeply of service to others? I would highly recommend not selfishly considering only what you want for yourself. And usually when you dig into people's deeper motivations, they want to belong to something bigger than themselves. They want to feel a part of the forces of love, truth, goodness, and service in this world, whether you belong to a traditional faith tradition or not. Usually people have very deeply spiritual motivations in terms of who they would like to become. Sit down and ask yourself, who do you want to become? If you have a purpose, here, now we're getting to the magic word, a purpose in terms of your life, it is to become who you feel called to be, to actualize the potential in terms of becoming the most loving, joyful, capable person that you can be. And that might include fostering the capacity for really powerful emotional resilience and depth that allows you to confront the difficulty and suffering of life that is inevitable and the tragedy with a position of internal strength and compassion. As you're asking yourself, what kind of person do you feel called to become in life? You're connecting with one, I'm not saying it's the only, but a very important and vital sense of purpose in your life. Who do you want to become? What kind of relationships do you want to have? What kind of impact might you want to have on the world? And most importantly, who do you imagine gets to have that kind of impact? And how can you start to become that kind of person? And now the next step, getting back to the beginning, is place boundaries around that person and around that path of purpose that you're called to walk, that you feel called to walk or inspired to walk, or whatever language you'd like to wrap around it. And realize that your ability to become that person, your ability to have that relationship, your ability to protect the person you love will demand you to develop the capacity to say no to everything and anything that threatens to take you off of that path or to move you in the wrong direction. And now, after you have gone through this process, and this is sort of where I am today, you will start to develop an intuitive felt sense for what it is like to be a person who has a sense of direction and purpose and the ability to say no, the ability to choose the right decision when the alternatives take you in a direction you do not want to go. And so I leave you with that. Get a sense of who you want to become. Build boundaries around that. Get an idea of what kinds of things, relationships, situations, behaviors take you farther away from becoming that person and having that kind of life experience, and which things help you move farther, closer to it. And now you have boundaries. And the next step is learning how to actually communicate those boundaries, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'll leave you with that. Become a person of purpose and learn how to say no. That's what I got. Peace.